welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. For episode 119, we are in Psalm 139. It is, 150 Psalms. I'm going to say this way too often, but this is probably in the top 10, don't you think? You got, the Lord is our shepherds, the 23rd Psalm. This has got to be up there. So Psalm 139, and I called this one, Test Me, O Lord, and we'll just dive right in. Verse 1. This is a Psalm of David, by the way. O Lord, you have searched me and you have known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my paths and my lying down are acquainted with all my ways. So you know when I sit down, you know when I rise, you know my thoughts from afar, you know my path, you know my lying down, you're acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in behind and before, you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. And then he says this, where shall I go from your spirit? Where shall I flee from your presence? So this is key. Where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, the grave, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, your right hand still holds me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even darkness is not as dark to you, the night is as bright as day, for darkness is as light with you. So David says, where could I possibly go from your presence? Where could I possibly escape from you? He goes, if I go to heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you're there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Even darkness can't hide me because darkness is like light to you. And it makes me think of these two other texts. I decided to add them in here so we could actually look at them really quickly. So Jeremiah 23, verses 23 and 24, God says to Jeremiah, God says, am I only a God nearby, declares the Lord, and not a God far away? Am I only a God nearby and not a God far away? Who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them, declares the Lord? Do I not fill the heavens and the earth? And so the idea that there isn't anywhere that someone can go away from the presence of the Lord, that God is everywhere, right? He's in the heavens and the earth. You can't sneak off. It makes me think a little bit of what it should make us think about is a little bit of the foolishness of Genesis 3 when Adam tries to hide from God. So also in Amos chapter 9, he says this, and he's speaking about the destruction or the judgment on Jerusalem. He says, I saw the Lord standing beside the altar, and he said, strike the capitals until the thresholds shake, shatter them on the heads of all the people, and those who are left I will kill with the sword. None of them shall flee away, none of them shall escape. If they dig into Sheol, from there my hand will bring them back. If they climb up into heaven, from there I will bring them down. If they hide on the tops of Mount Carmel, from there I will search for them and take them. If they hide at the bottom of the sea, I will command the serpent, and it shall bite them. If they go into captivity before their enemies, there I will command the sword, and it will kill them. I will fix my eyes on them for evil and not for good. So this is God pouring out judgment on the people of Israel. And he says, you can't escape from me. Wherever you go, I will find you and I will accomplish what I want to accomplish. Obviously, not nearly, Amos 9 is not nearly as encouraging as Psalm 139 and what David is saying. But what do we take from this? How can we be encouraged by this? There are times in our lives, I think, probably for most of us, where something happens, something is hard, and it can be any set of circumstances. Quit comparing yourself to everybody else and going, well, my situation is not as bad as theirs. If you are overwhelmed, if you are in duress, there are times in our lives, I think, where what we do is we tend to go, where is God? Where is God right now? And the answer is there isn't anywhere you can go. There's not anywhere you can be that you are outside of who God is. Like he knows. And we could take it narrow here. I don't think we have to, but David is saying, when I sit down and I rise up, you know my thoughts, you know where I've been, you know my path, you're acquainted with all my ways. Before a word is even on my tongue, you know what I've said, you hem me in before and behind. I don't know that that's unique to David. I think that the Lord knows our hearts. He knows our ways. He knows where we are. And so you can never be outside of the view of God. He sees you, he knows you, he cares for you. Even when you are in your darkest moment, darkness is as bright as the noonday sun to him. And I mentioned the 23rd Psalm earlier, so let's think about this, that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? For you are with me. So even in our darkest moments, God is there in our presence and with us. And he goes on to say, David goes on to say, for you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I probably shouldn't pause and say this, but I'm going to anyway. Depending on how you translate this sentence, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Um, it's interesting because depending on how you translate it, some translations will say, I praise you, for you are fearfully wonderful. So some people attribute this to God as you are fearfully wonderful, and some people say, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Anyway, it's interesting to me either way. God is fearfully wonderful, and I believe that he has made us by his power fearfully and wonderfully. And so anyway, my wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. So I like how Job talks about this when Job talks about how you curdled me together like milk in my mother's womb, or the way that the bones are formed in the mother's womb is a mystery. And so David's going, look, even when you formed me together in my mother's womb, you knew these things. You knew me well. He says, your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, even as when as yet there was none of them. So in your book, every one of my days were written, even when there was none of them. So that makes me think of Galatians 1:15, where Paul says that he was set apart to be a preacher of the gospel even from the womb. And yet we know that when Paul grew up and was a Pharisee, he was a persecutor of the church, and yet God had a plan for him even before he was born. Or maybe it makes me think of John the Baptist, who in chapter 1 of the book of John, we're told that, sorry, not chapter 1 of John, chapter 1 of Luke 1, we're told that God appointed John the Baptist before he was even born, before he was even conceived in the womb, to be a forerunner for Christ. And so I think that God has purpose for people? Yes. Jeremiah is an example of that in Jeremiah 1. So is every person a Paul or a John the Baptist or a Jeremiah? Probably not. Does this mean that God has a purpose, an eternal gospel-centered purpose for everybody? Not in the same way that he did for Paul and Jeremiah and John the Baptist, but I know that God forms us. He makes us. He's the creator of us, and he knows our days before they come to be. And so I love that. He says this, how precious are your thoughts towards me, O God? How vast is the sum of them? If I would count them, they are more than the sand. I awake and I am still with you. This makes me think of John 21, where John says, if we were to write down all the miracles that Christ has done, not even all the books of all the earth could contain it. And now here the psalmist David says, your thoughts towards me are so many that I couldn't possibly count them. They're more than the sands on the seashore. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God, men of blood, depart from me. They speak against you with malice intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? Do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them my enemies. And then this is where I titled today's talk from. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any grievous way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. This is a prayer that I've prayed for myself very regularly over the last 20 or so years, 20, 25 years. I am keenly aware that I am not always aware of the sinful inclinations or proclivities of my heart. And I'm aware that there are distractions in me and there are things in me that would lead me away from the Lord. We can talk more about that in the New Testament a little bit. I don't know that those things are in me anymore. God has set us free from sin and the power of sin. But suffice it to say, I'm frail and I do not understand God yet as I ought to understand God. I'm working on it. I am asking God to teach me more and more every day. So I regularly pray, Lord, teach me, search my heart, search my mind, see if there's anything in me that doesn't line up with who you are, and then lead me in your way everlasting. And this is a prayer that I adore praying because I want to be a person who, in all of my thoughts, in the intent of my heart, that I am directed towards the things of God. And so I love this text. There's a couple of other places in the Old Testament that speak to this as well. I'll include those for you in the blog. But I love this psalm. It's beautiful. I think we go to this psalm a lot, particularly we go to this psalm a lot. A lot of people use this psalm as pro-life argument, which I don't think it's a bad text to use. I just think that there's more that David is saying here than just that. He's not just arguing for the sanctity of life, although I think we could make that argument here. I think that he is talking about the faithfulness of God as our creator, as humans creator, and how he cares for us, and we cannot escape his watchful eye. We couldn't come out from under who he is. He's God. There's wherever you go, whatever you do, whatever joy you live in tomorrow, whatever sorrow falls on your head tomorrow, God is still with us. And so anyway, test me, O Lord, know my heart, try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see what in me does not line up with you, and then lead me in your way everlasting. And that will take care of episode 119. For episode 120, let's see what we've got here. Over here in episode 120, we're going to be in Psalm 141 and 143, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible through another section of Scripture where we come to know and understand God a little bit better. Look, if you're brand new to Simpler Bible, we have all sorts of resources available for you. Go to our website, simplerbible.com, and there you can find these videos, you can find our podcast, you can find links to our social media, and you can even find a blog post with additional scriptures if you want to go into a little bit more study than we had time to cover in this podcast and video today. We hope that this tool will be exactly that for you, a tool. Not something that replaces your daily walk with God, but something that enhances your daily walk with God and helps you to know and enjoy Him more. Thank you so much for being part of this, and we'll see you again tomorrow.